They're just too young for the camping trip. My sister-in-law Amanda's voice dripped with fake concern over the phone. We're going to be hiking difficult trails, and there's no way your little ones could keep up. Maybe in a few years. I gripped my phone tighter, watching my 6-year-old daughter Sophie and 4-year-old son Lucas playing in our living room. They were building a fort out of blankets and pillows, their eyes shining with the same adventurous spirit that apparently wasn't good enough for the annual Palmer family camping trip. My name is Olivia Palmer, and for the 3rd year in a row, my children and I were being excluded from what was supposed to be a family tradition. The worst part? My husband Matt was still invited and expected to attend. The kids are stronger than you think, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Sophie hiked 3 miles at the state park last weekend, and Lucas. Oh, Olivia, Amanda cut me off with a laugh that made my skin crawl. That's a park trail. We're talking about real camping here. Besides, we've already planned everything. The sites are booked, and there's just no room for extras. Extras. That's what my children have been reduced to. I watched Sophie help Lucas place another blanket on their fort, her small hands careful and precise. These were the same children Amanda called wild and unmanageable at family gatherings, despite never actually spending time with them. I understand, I said quietly, even though I didn't. Have a good trip. I ended the call before she could respond, but the damage was already done. Sophie had stopped what she was doing and was looking at me with those big brown eyes that seemed to understand too much for her age. Was that Aunt Amanda? She asked, her voice small. About the camping trip. I nodded, sitting down on the floor beside their half-built fort. Lucas immediately crawled into my lap, his favorite dinosaur stuffed animal clutched to his chest. Why do they want us to come? Sophie's lower lip trembled slightly. Is it because I dropped my hot chocolate at Christmas? My heart shattered. The hot chocolate incident had been minor, a simple accident that Amanda had turned into proof of why my children weren't refined enough for family gatherings. She'd made such a fuss about her expensive rug that Sophie had cried, despite Matt and me offering to pay for cleaning. No, sweetie, I pulled her close with my free arm. It has nothing to do with that. Aunt Amanda just thinks. She thinks the trip might be too difficult for you both. But I'm strong. Lucas piped up, flexing his little arms. I can climb all the way up the big slide at the park by myself. I smiled, ruffling his hair. Yes, you are, buddy. You both are. And you know what? I have an idea. Their eyes lit up. They knew that tone in my voice. It was the same one I used when announcing surprise ice cream trips or weekend adventures to the zoo. What if we had our own camping trip, right here in our backyard? Sophie's forehead wrinkled in thought. Can we do that? We can do anything we want, I said, feeling a plan formed in my mind. In fact, we can make it even better than a regular camping trip. We'll have our own special place whenever we want it. With marshmallows? Lucas asked hopefully. Definitely with marshmallows, and stars and stories and everything else that makes camping magical. I looked at their fort, still under construction, and saw the potential. Our backyard wasn't huge, but it was cozy, with a small garden I'd planted and enough space for what I was envisioning. Matt had always said I had a knack for turning simple things into adventures. It was time to prove him right. That evening when Matt came home from work, I was ready. The kids were already in bed, and I had sketches spread across the kitchen table. Plans for what our backyard could become. Amanda called, he said, loosening his tie. About the camping trip. I know, I cut him off gently. She called me too. But I want to show you something. I laid out my vision, a permanent fort structure we could weatherproof, with a retractable canopy for stargazing, a small fire pit for those magical marshmallow moments, garden lights strung up to create our own constellation of stars, a dedicated space where our children could feel special, not excluded. It's going to take work, I admitted, and probably most of your free weekends until summer. But Matt, I can't keep watching them feel like they're not good enough for your family. We need to create our own traditions. Matt was quiet for a long moment, looking at my drawings. I held my breath, waiting. His relationship with his sister had always been complicated, and I knew these camping trips were one of the few times they really connected. You know what? He finally said, a slow smile spreading across his face. The kids would love this, and honestly, I'd rather build something amazing with you than listen to Amanda brag about her new camping gear for 3 days straight. I laughed, feeling tears prick at my eyes. Really? You'd skip the trip? Really? He pulled me into a hug. Besides, I've seen what you can do with a simple blanket fort. I can't wait to see what you'll create with actual lumber and a power drill. That night, as I lay in bed sketching more details for our backyard transformation, I felt something I hadn't in a long time when it came to family activities: excitement. Amanda might have her exclusive camping trips, but we were about to create something far more magical. And the best part, it would be ours, all ours. Free from judgment and exclusion. A place where my children could be themselves, where adventure didn't have prerequisites or age limits. Little did I know, our backyard project was about to become so much more than just an alternative to a camping trip. It was about to change everything. The transformation of our backyard began on a sunny Saturday morning in April. Matt and I had spent weeks researching, planning, and gathering materials. Sophie and Lucas bounced with excitement as they watched their father unload lumber from his truck, their small hands already clutching the plastic tools we'd bought them to help with the project. "Can I paint it blue?" Lucas asked, trailing behind Matt with his toy hammer. "Blue like the sky." "We'll let you both pick the colors," I promised, setting up our workstation. "But first, we need to build the foundation." The basic structure took shape over that first weekend, a raised platform with sturdy posts that would support the retractable canopy. Matt's engineering background proved invaluable as he calculated angles and ensured everything was perfectly level. I focused on the details that would make it magical: built-in storage benches for camping supplies, a special shelf for our growing collection of battery-operated lanterns, and a dedicated space for our adventure log, where the kids could document their backyard expeditions. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, brought over lemonade and cookies, watching with amusement as Sophie proudly showed off her construction site supervisor badge I'd made her. "This is quite the project," she remarked, helping me string up the first set of garden lights. "Amanda called me yesterday, wanted to know what all the noise was about." I paused in my work, trying to keep my expression neutral. Of course Amanda had called. She made it her business to know everything happening in the family circle, even though she lived across town. She seemed quite concerned, Mrs. Thompson continued, a knowing look in her eyes. "Said something about it being a shame you weren't joining their camping trip instead of wasting time on this." I felt my cheeks flush, but before I could respond, Lucas came running over with his latest discovery, a painted rock he found while helping dig holes for the posts. "Look, Mommy, it's got sparkles." His entire face lit up as he showed us his treasure. "Can we make a special place to keep camping rocks?" "Of course we can, buddy," I smiled, pulling him close. "In fact, why don't we create a whole nature collection corner?" Mrs. Thompson watched our interaction with a soft smile. She said quietly, "I think some people confuse exclusivity with excellence. What you're building here? This is excellence." Her words stayed with me as we continued working. Every weekend brought new progress and new magical moments. Matt installed solar-powered fairy lights that created patterns like constellations on the canopy. I set up a weatherproof cabinet filled with field guides, magnifying glasses, and other tools for backyard exploration. The kids decorated their nature collection corner with found treasures, interesting rocks, pressed flowers, and fallen feathers. We were putting the finishing touches on our creation when my mother-in-law dropped by unannounced. I was up on a ladder, hanging wind chimes that Sophie had helped make, when I heard her sharp intake of breath. "What in the world is all this?" I turned to see her standing on our back patio, designer purse clutched tightly as she surveyed our work. Behind her, Matt emerged from the shed with more supplies, and the kids looked up from where they were arranging their latest rock collection. "We're building our own camping spot," Lucas announced proudly. "Want to see my special corner?" Before she could respond, Sophie grabbed her grandmother's hand and began giving her the grand tour we practiced. She showed her the built-in benches that doubled as storage, the retractable canopy for stargazing, and the string lights that made patterns on the walls at night. "And look," Sophie said, pointing to our adventure log, "we write down everything we discover, just like real scientists." I watched my mother-in-law's expression shift from skepticism to something softer as Sophie flipped through pages filled with childish drawings of butterflies and pressed leaves. Lucas joined them, eagerly showing off his growing rock collection, each one labeled in his wobbly handwriting. "They did most of the decorating themselves," Matt said, coming to stand beside me. Pretty impressive, right? His mother touched one of the wind chimes gently, listening to its soft melody. It's not what I expected, she admitted. Amanda said you were building some sort of shed. Amanda says a lot of things, I replied quietly, but without bitterness. Our backyard haven had taught me that the best response to exclusion was creation, not retaliation. Grandma, will you stay for our first official campfire? Sophie asked, eyes bright with hope. Daddy's going to teach us how to make the perfect s'mores. I held my breath, waiting for the polite refusal, the excuse about prior commitments. But something had shifted in my mother-in-law's demeanor as she took in the joy on her grandchildren's faces. You know what? She said, setting her purse down on one of the benches. I think I'd like that very much. That evening, as we sat around our small fire pit, watching Lucas carefully roast his first marshmallow while Sophie taught her grandmother our special stargazing song, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the flames. We had built more than just a backyard camping spot. We had created a space where memories could grow, where exclusion had no power, and where every adventure was welcome. The best part? The real turning point came during the long weekend when Amanda and her group returned from their annual camping trip. Our backyard oasis had become a daily source of joy. Morning birdwatching with Lucas, afternoon reading sessions in the shade of our canopy with Sophie, and evening stargazing with Matt. I was helping the kids set up for their weekly Explorers Club meeting, a tradition they'd started themselves. When my phone buzzed with multiple notifications, Amanda had posted photos from their trip, perfectly posed shots of adults looking uncomfortable in designer outdoor gear, carefully filtered images of untouched camp meals. But what caught my attention were the comments from her own children. Mom, why can't we have a cool fort like Sophie and Lucas? Can we go visit Aunt Olivia's backyard camp? I want to learn about rocks too. Amanda had deleted the comments quickly, but not before other family members had seen them. Within hours, my phone was ringing. My nieces and nephews were begging their parents to visit our backyard haven. The first to cave was Amanda's husband, Tom. He showed up one Saturday morning with their kids, looking somewhat sheepish. The kids haven't stopped talking about your setup, he admitted. Would it be okay if they joined today's activities? I smiled, watching his children's eyes widen as they took in our magical space. Of course. Sophie and Lucas are about to start their morning nature walk. They'd love some exploring companions. What followed was pure joy. The children fell into an easy rhythm together, Sophie proudly showing her cousins how to use the magnifying glasses, Lucas teaching them his special rock-finding technique. Their laughter filled the air, pure and uninhibited. Over the next few weeks, more family members began to drift into our orbit. My mother-in-law became a regular fixture, arriving with new field guides and craft supplies for the kids' projects. Other aunts and uncles stopped by, drawn by stories of backyard adventures and the genuine happiness that radiated from our space. Even Amanda couldn't resist forever. She arrived one evening, just as we were setting up for our weekly family campfire, a tradition that had grown to include whoever wanted to join. I brought marshmallows, she said stiffly, holding out a bag. The organic kind. Perfect timing, I replied, taking the peace offering for what it was. The kids are about to share their weekly discoveries. That night, something shifted. As we all sat around the fire, listening to Sophie and Lucas present their findings from the week, a unique beetle, a fascinating cloud formation, a new constellation they'd identified, I watched Amanda's carefully maintained facade crack. Her own children were engaged, asking questions, sharing observations. They weren't fidgeting or complaining or asking for their tablets. They were present, connected, alive with curiosity. I never thought, she started quietly, then stopped. This isn't what I expected. What did you expect? I asked gently. She gestured vaguely at our surroundings. Not this, not something so real. In the firelight, I could see tears in her eyes. Years of maintaining perfect appearances, of creating exclusive experiences that looked good on social media, but felt hollow in reality, seemed to weigh heavily on her shoulders. You know, she said finally, watching her daughter help Lucas add another entry to the adventure log, our camping trips never had this much actual joy. 2 months later, we hosted our first extended family campout. Our backyard was filled with tents, some spilling into the neighbors' yards. They'd happily given permission, enchanted by the community we built. Children ran between them, their laughter echoing in the summer evening. Adults gathered around multiple fire pits, sharing stories and actually talking, not for show, not for social media, but for the simple pleasure of connection. Amanda sat beside me, both of us watching the scene unfold. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, "for excluding you all those years. I thought I was creating something special, but I was just building walls." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "The wonderful thing about walls," I said, "is that they can become bridges when you add a door." She laughed, wiping away a tear. "Your metaphors are still terrible." "But my s'mores are amazing," I countered, handing her one. Above us, the stars twinkled through our canopy, and the wind chimes Sophie had made sang softly in the breeze. Our backyard haven had become more than just an alternative to exclusion. It had become the heart of our extended family, a place where everyone belonged, where adventure had no age limit, and where the only requirement for entry was an open heart. As I watched Lucas teach his cousins his secret marshmallow roasting technique, and Sophie lead a group of adults in her latest stargazing song, I realized we built something far more valuable than any exclusive camping trip could offer. We created a tradition of inclusion, a legacy of love, and a space where every family member, young or old, graceful or clumsy, polished or perfectly imperfect, could find their own kind of magic. And that was the greatest adventure of all.